right, so welcome everybody to another episode of the Lest We Forget podcast, a historical podcast by Tenement Yard Media. I'm your host for this episode, Davy. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about the fight for the Emancipation Day holiday in Jamaica. Cool? Now, just to be clear, this episode is not about Emancipation Day as the event, right? Which in the Anglophone Caribbean, that is the English-speaking Caribbean, is celebrated as August 1st, 1838, right? That's when, slavery ended, chattel slavery ended in the British colonies, right? That is not what this episode is about, right? If you want to know specifically about emancipation and stuff, we do have episodes about that and some of the events that led to it. So the salt plantation episode, that's a good episode to check. A lot of the time when people talk about slavery in the Caribbean, it's largely sugar, you understand, and hold that. But we do have an episode talking about salt plantations that existed in the Caribbean and even the enslaved black people that work on these salt plantations and how important their story is, and even more so how salt and the production of salt, you understand, has dictated Caribbean diet for like the same way sugar dictates over there, the same way salt does. And it's one of the best things we ever write, you understand? Like, listen, it's a good episode. Good episode. You understand? We also have the Christmas Rebellion episode. That's a good episode as well, about that touch a bit on emancipation. And what else may I say in my head? Oh, the fight for land rights in Jamaica. That's like post emancipation. That goes into like how after chattel slavery ended in the Caribbean, the British still found ways to tie black people to the land. You understand? And that was largely through taxes. And those policies still impacted people throughout the Caribbean today. Not only black people, but also Indo-West Indians themselves. So yeah, that's also a good episode. It's a good episode. Not gonna lie to a good episode. Yeah. So if that's something that you're interested in, you don't know, you can, if you want to refresh memory about Emancipation Day, specifically, you can check out those episodes. This episode is not that. This episode I talk about the Emancipation Day holiday. The holiday. So it's gonna be extensive and stretch across, different histories. Cool? Now, another thing I want to touch on real quick, I understand to the introduction long, but this is special. Just walk with me. This is a very special episode. Just walk with me, right? So, I write political and economic history for Lest We Forget, right? Like, that's mostly what most episodes on the podcast is about, right? That's what I write about, understand. But then, there are other things I like. Do I like politics? Do I like econ? Yeah. All right, let's go. There are things I like more in life, right? And I love music. I like music. And for me, my introduction to like history and Caribbean history was through music. So it just, but the way Lest We Forget set up, I'm kind of like limited in the way I can talk about musical history. I don't think we have ever had a musical history episode on a podcast, but that's gonna change. That's gonna change soon. It's gonna change very soon. You understand? 2025, big year for us over here, big year. It's gonna change very soon. But I was given the opportunity in 2023 to become a columnist for Gleaner, specifically the Sunday Gleaner, where I write music history, right? Specifically around Jamaican music, right? And I started doing that. But the thing is that because the entertainment lifestyle, the food and the flare decks, the flare sections, they're all under the same decks, which is the entertainment and lifestyle decks, are the same editor, right? So big up to my editor, Jamila Lichmore, big up yourself. Yeah, Miss Lichmore, she always like ask me for like write other things for the other sections. So last year, 2023, August 2023, she asked me to write an article about the history of Emancipation Day holiday in Jamaica. And I end up writing that article. I think I end up writing 3,000 words, but I don't know a newspaper, you're gonna need space to ads and other things. I dumb it down to like Dumb it down is not the correct phrase I'm supposed to use, but shorten. I shorten it to like 1,500 words, right? And the title of that article is The Fight for the Emancipation Day Holiday in Jamaica. You see me, a driver, sir? So it shares the same title as this episode, right? So this episode in its true form is an extension, is the longer version of this episode. And it just felt right to release this episode given recent events, you understand, happening and setting Jamaica society. You understand? Really, we depend on really me that come busting out in 2025. Like me I say, man, some of my best writings gonna happen at 2025. You understand? Like tenement yard me that's at work, we're gonna really come strong at 2025. But the rest of me go just in 2024 with a bang. So not with a bang, but just with something, you know? So yeah, that's what this episode is basically about. And this episode it's a bit longer than the initial 3,000 words actually, because I did add some more. As I said, given recent events, this episode is 4,908 words, right? So I'm gonna say long, but I don't know if you want a shorter version, can check out the Gleaner article. But I don't know, we also gonna have the written version of this episode on our website. So if you have hearing disability, you know, really like podcasts, you know, really like hearing me hosting, tired for hear that by now, like you know, change. So we are giving you all options over here. You can always check out the written version and stuff. So all of that over there and stuff. But close to 7 minutes intro. Yeah, man. Make us start. So again, this episode, the fight for the Emancipation Day holiday in Jamaica. Cool. All right, make us start. Now, in Jamaica, when the clock struck midnight on August 1st, 1838, Reverend William Nib declared, "The Negro is free." In a letter to a confidant, Nib recalls the following: "Never did I hear such a sound. The winds of freedom appear to have been let loose. The very building shook at the strange yet sacred joy." End quote. Now, in Jamaica, like other British colonies, black persons would gather at town squares and other public areas to celebrate the end of one of the most brutal acts of mankind. And this celebration at the end of chattel slavery would continue throughout the years. Now, according to the Falmouth Post, which is a great archival newspaper for anybody who's interested in like post really 19th century Jamaica history. From as early as 1860, August 1st saw many Jamaicans march throughout the streets, playing music and waving flags with biblical scriptures written on them. Led by clergymen who called themselves apostles of liberty, children were given cakes and lemonades in decorated classrooms, while in the afternoon, persons would gather at public meetings where sums of money were collected and used for charitable causes. No, at the same time, you understand, people are commemorating emancipation in their own way. People have them backlash over it. You see me I'm trying to say? So the island's elite, mostly white persons, yeah, they distastefully termed it a Negro holiday. And this opposition would further intensify after the 1865 Morat Bay Rebellion, which by and large is a racial uprising. Man understand say we never learn it as a racial uprising, but it's a racial uprising. But though, what were they? 1, 2, 3. My math's kind of off. But next year, a big anniversary for the Morat Bay Rebellion, and hold me to my words. I have a special episode that come out. Like, my mid I write through it, I'm a midway, I'm almost finish write it, but may I tell you, I probably have like 3 paragraph, alright, for finish right, but may I tell you, nice. It is coming, right? No. After the 1865 Morat Bay Rebellion, there came rumors that another black uprising would take place on Emancipation Day in 1866. And so with these fears, many missionaries did not organize around the event anniversary, and a few years after, it seemed public observance was dwindling. However, come the 1870s, people, in a them local own community, you understand, started to commemorate the day once more. And this effort was led by black persons of lighter complexion. Now, according to the historians Brian L. Moore and Michelle A. Johnson in the book They Do As They Please, The Jamaica Struggle for Cultural Freedom After Morat Bay, this is what they said.
It is interesting that it was persons of lighter complexion who were credited with reviving the public celebrations of interest. They tended to be from the middling ranks of Jamaican society, which would normally seek to maintain their social distance from those of darker complexion, and indeed to denounce the latter's cultural expressions, while some within their ranks wanted to forget the shame of their ancestral enslavement. Others may have hoped that by supporting the celebration of freedom, they would call attention to how much progress had been made by them as a class. Not only had they moved out of mere agricultural labor and into the trades, but some among them had been elevated, both in terms of complexion and status, to become the advocates of those not as well placed as themselves.
Now, if you missed the name of the book, just remember that every episode of Lest You Forget have an episode page where the reading lists and every single source that is used in the creation of the episode, they're on the website, they're on the page. You understand? So, don't worry yourself about that, right? Cool. We can continue. Thus, throughout the 1870s, these persons marched through the streets, beginning in parade, and eventually found themselves in Spanish Town for a picnic. This effort kick-started other remembrance activities in other parts of the island. In rural Jamaica, the commemoration took the form of church services and picnics. And by the 1880s, August 1st was unofficially recognized as a public holiday. Popular stores in Kingston would close on that day, while church services, lectures, and larger picnics were happening throughout the island. With this effort, by 1893, the holiday was added to the list of mandatory public holidays when C.S. Farquharson, that's Farquharson, introduced the Public General Holidays Bill. The bill increased the number of public holidays from 9 to 10 and to include a new addition, Emancipation Day. From then onwards, other events such as athletic competitions, cricket matches, concerts, etc. were added to Emancipation Day celebratory activities. Vibes. Now, throughout the years to come, the holiday would have special events held on that day. In 1894, just a year after, the People's Convention, organized by the black journalist and politician Dr. Robert Love, was held on August 1st. A July 27, 1901 article published in his newspaper, The Jamaican Advocate, stated,
"It is the intention of the People's Convention to celebrate the day in a manner befitting the event, and the obligation of the children of the emancipated. It is a day on which to recall the history of our fathers, and to contemplate the destinies of our children."
Then other organizations such as the Jamaica Patriotic League would come to hold their annual meetings on that day. Still, despite now being an official holiday, opposition still continued. Still did that go on. Some were of the view that employers will lose 10 working days each year, while others argued that the remembrance of emancipation will revive all animosity and hate between white and black people in Jamaica. And others were of the view that the celebration of emancipation was irrelevant to black Jamaicans. And such, by the mid-1910s, one of the strongest opposition to the public holiday was the leading Jamaica journalistic outlet at this time, the Jamaica Gleaner. In an August 14, 1918 editorial piece titled Observer or Not, they stated that the holiday was not celebrated in any other country where slavery existed, so why should it be a holiday in Jamaica? And I also, a nonsense them attack, because other British colonies were observing Emancipation Day. You understand? But it's because of Gleaner alone was like have the attention of Jamaican people at this time. Like they was the biggest journalist outlet. Them could just say whatever. Vibes. But this is what the editorial piece said.
But some of these slaves survived the horrible ordeal and won to freedom once more. We do not imagine that they or their descendants would have thought that they ought to hold Thanksgiving anniversaries on that account. We rather think that all who had any historic connection with the institution of slavery would be devoutly thankful if it were never mentioned in these days. Decidedly, the people of England have no wish to be reminded of it, But as we have said, August 1st has no sort of religious significance today, and after 8 years can have none. There is therefore no reason in the world why anyone should endeavor to observe it as of special and of particular significance.
And it is with this that I want to mention that something very unique about the Gleaner at this time. No, the Gleaner editor at this time was H.G. Delisier. No, H.G. Delisier, right? Throughout the Gleaner editorials, throughout his run as Gleaner editor from the early 1900s right up until like I think the early 1940s, he consistently used the Gleaner editorial to advocate for the Jamaica's business class while opposing black working class political and economic power and plight. You understand? Now, alongside his role as a journalist, he also wrote some very racist fan fiction on him behalf, you understand, to further propel his views on Jamaican society. And listen, I not got too much in this. You understand? But one of his most famous novels that portrayed this racist ideology, because that was really what it was his 1929 book, The White Witch of Rosal. No, walk with me here. Again, I'm not go through this again, but I wrote an episode titled The Not So Epic Story of Lady Musgrave Road. Go check out that episode. There's a whole paragraph, couple actually. You understand? A whole section talking about H.G. Delisier and the White Witch of Rosal really being a very racist story. Yet, despite opposition from the Jamaica Gleaner and the nation mostly white elites, there was no amendment to the Public General Holidays Act, and Jamaicans continued to observe Emancipation Day as an official holiday. Organizations would also have their own celebrations. In 1934, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, organized one of the largest events to acknowledge Emancipation Day up to this point. Right? Now, by the latter end of 1937, proposals were being made to commemorate the upcoming 100th anniversary of Emancipation, and more just in a special manner. You understand? At the centenary, you want something special, right? And one of these persons was Reverend J.W. Maxwell, a member of the Legislative Council, who proposed that a special kind of university scholarship for Jamaicans who were specifically descendants of enslaved black people. Now, we're going to go on a little side note here because I have to explain what was happening and why this scholarship was important and why this had a very specific criteria of descendants of enslaved black people. Now, at the time, the two main scholarships on the island for tertiary students to study abroad were the Rhodes Scholarship and the Jamaican Scholarship. And if you wanted to do like say law or medicine or like even get like a PhD or some like they were just at this time, remember, you will never make it, you understand? So the country was very limited in what you could study, you understand, and how you could study it on the island, you understand? So it was just the Rhodes Scholarship and the Jamaican Scholarship who could have helped you, you understand? However, since the scholarship were on offer on the island, there were noticeable similarities among the winners. Now, as the academic historian Dr. Henry Atlick, wonderful lady, states in her book, Public Secrets, Race and Color in Colonial and Independent Jamaica,
the winners of the Jamaica Scholarship between 1918 and 1914 were invariably white or very light-skinned, and the sons and daughters of senior officials, school headmasters, etc. The Rhodes, on the other hand, were only by the sons of the white elite, who could easily pay for their child's university education.
No, basically what she says is that, brother, I be a white and light skinned people that I say. And it's not like light skin, it's just like light skin white passing. As me and Travis say, like if you line up everybody who will get the scholarship them, yeah, CM pigment. You understand? Either white or you're black and white passing. You understand? So think Norman Manley. Norman is a Rhodes scholar. So think film complexion. Like Norman is a white. You understand? Like clearly we start put Norman in front of like white people. He's not a white man. You see me and say, but in Jamaica. You understand? And in certain areas of the world, him can pass. You see me? So that's basically what was happening. You understand? Now, when allegations of race preferences were thrown at the Jamaican Scholarship and Rhodes Committee, they stated that their decisions were surely based on merit. However, Dr. Atlick states otherwise.
That the son of an expat member of the JSC won a Jamaica scholarship and the girls' scholarship was not awarded in 1923 because it was alleged an insufficiently high standard had been achieved, while it was generally known that a black girl had come first in the HSC, suggests that the Jamaica scholarships were awarded not just on the basis of merit. In its submission to the WIRC, the Jamaica Independent Schools Commission, which represented private secondary schools, accused the government of discriminating in the allocation of the Jamaica scholarships. It mentioned that in 1938, white Joyce Tate had won the girls' scholarship, but a very intelligent black girl had also taken the qualifying exam. The teacher who had tutored this black girl had tried to find out how she had done compared to the winner, but was not given a list of results in order of merit. Jamaica was a small island, and many people thus knew who had taken part in the qualifying exams and their abilities, which did much to fuel accusations that color played a role in the Jamaica scholarship competition.
No, when black Jamaicans specifically call out the Rhodes Committee for the race and color discrimination, it was A.G. Delisier, you see, pattern of behavior, in his capacity as Gleaner editor, still as Gleaner editor, who came to the defense of the white establishment, saying that black Jamaicans were not Rhodes scholars, not because of race, but because they were just not strong candidates. Again, I say a pattern of behavior. Now, as Dr. Atlick states, the sentiment of Delisier and other elites, and I quote, reinforce the stereotype of black people as less intelligent, end quote. Also, we're not done with A.G. Delisier yet. We're not done. You understand? We're not done. Couple months ago, I finished another episode on him. And I got drop in, it I got drop. But this have to do specifically around voting and election history in Jamaica. So as soon as, Mr. Holness call the next election, that's a good job. But we're not done with him yet. We could continue. Now, as such, Reverend J. W. Maxwell's proposal of the special affirmative action scholarship aimed at black Jamaicans was welcomed by the masses. Still, even though the government was willing to put money towards a special emancipation scholarship, they had a stipulation that it was open to everyone and not just black Jamaicans. And to this, Dr. Atlick further stated,
some contemporaries read this as evidence of the government's commitment to color blindness, but in fact, it demonstrates the opposite. The government wanted to appease critical African Jamaican politicians without endangering the existing race and color hierarchy. This embrace of blackness was purely symbolic.
Still, even though the scholarship was to be one of the biggest events of 1838 and just like a whole thing around this special scholarship, another event would overshadow it. And we know this, the labor riots of 1838, right? And the riots propelled by the black working class took place over a number of days in May and rocked the island nationwide. And this was really following a pattern that was happening across the British Caribbean. So Trinidad and Tobago would have their labor riots. St. Vincent, just known as St. Vincent at the time, would have their labor riots. Barbados would have their as well. But actually spoke a bit about those labor riots that was happening in the Caribbean and I want to say it's the first episode of the episode about the Grenada Revolution. We go a bit about that. But say, if you want more stuff, just more meat to that, you can check out that episode. Not only that episode, but just that 5-episode series. But in the future, we will be releasing an episode of the labor riots, not only in Jamaica, but across the British West Indies that occurred in the 1830s and really opened the gates for political organizing. Structured, that's the word I need to use, structured political organizing across British colonies. It a come. I finish right. Some of the countries may not finish right all, but it a come. Just know these things are coming, okay? It's coming. I me wanna write. So when I say it a come, take that with just give me grace. That's what I'm saying. Be hopeful, but at the same time, just give me grace. Right. Continue. Still, the riots were 3 months before the 100th commemoration of emancipation, and as such, the white establishment on the island and the government was fearful that violence would break out on August 1st. Then rumors started to appear that land promised to black people by Queen Victoria in 1838 would finally be given to them in 1938. To this, the government threatened to prosecute anyone who took part in an activity to take other person's land. Still, despite the rumors taking over the island, Emancipation Day of 1838 went without any incident, and the centenary anniversary of Emancipation in Jamaica went without any relative uprising. It was peaceful, right? Nobody really do nothing. And so the 100th celebration consisted of the usual church services, picnics, and other festivities, cricket matches, football stuff, all that, right? Now, still, two camps of public figures emerge in their difference of musings that they uttered on the 100th celebration. Now, in one camp, persons praised the British for the ending of slavery and expressed their devotion to the crown for this great deed. So, for example, A.B. Lowe, a member of St. James Legislative Council, praised the progress the island had made in the last 100 years. And then Bustamante, Alexander Bustamante, in his capacity as a trade union, right? As a trade unionist at the time, BITU would have been, firm and stuff. He expressed his gratitude to Queen Victoria for ending slavery. And then you had the Anglican pastor, Canon J.C. Swaby, stated that he was thankful for Jamaicans to be a British citizen. Yeah. So that there was that camp. You understand? You understand? I'm sending praise to the crown. You understand? And in the other camp, you understand, persons were very reflective of the past and its impact on the nation's future. So you had Dr. Sylvia Lowe, who reminded Jamaicans to reflect, but to also leave, and I quote, footprints that those who come after you will deem worthy to follow, end quote. And then the feminist, writer, just icon, Amy Bailey, in her July 10, 1838 article published in the Public Opinion, emphasized the importance of meditating on the nation's past to shape its future, while the educator Edwin Allen, in a June 27, 1838 Gleaner article, reminded persons that complete emancipation has not yet been achieved and the black struggle for freedom continues. Right. No, if you are like, even if you're interested in wanting to read those letters that they wrote, I didn't want to include it in the episode. You understand? Too long, so I'm gonna summarize everything. But if you want the full extent of the episode, just DM Tenement Yard Media or send us an email. I gladly have somebody, the person in charge of our emails and stuff, to just send you a copy and stuff. Still, the labor riots occurring in the same year of the 100th anniversary of emancipation, a further contradiction of the mentality of different Jamaicans at this time. You understand? Clearly. Persons who were deemed leaders and intellectuals and public figures are two different camps that exist in Jamaica, especially when it comes to rhetoric around Jamaican progress and Jamaica relationship to the crown. And with this, in his book, Freedom's Children, the 1838 Labor Rebellion and the Birth of Modern Jamaica, the academic historian Dr. Colin A. Palmer speaks on this contradiction.
The centenary of emancipation provided Jamaicans with a marvelous moment for societal introspection and an opportunity to imagine the island's future. The moment for deep introspection was lost, however, overshadowed by the fears of the recurrence of the social disturbances of the previous months. The people of property and standing were concerned less about introspection and more about protecting a status quo that had benefited them.
And it was this that the acting governor C.C. Woolley, still meditating on rumors of violence, told the nation that it was a time for a celebration, but emphasized the need for law and order moving forward. Nevertheless, as I said before, Emancipation Day went off without anything basically happening. People just continue doing what they were doing. And Emancipation Day continued to be a public holiday in Jamaica throughout the rest of the decade and continued doing so without any serious opposition in the 40s and early 50s. But then came 1955, right? No. In 1955, Jamaica embarked on a national celebration dubbed the 300 celebration. And in summary, right, this is one of the maddest things that has ever happened in Jamaica history. It's in my top 20 of political, what was the word I'm looking for? Proposals put forward in Parliament, right? Now, basically, this celebration was conceptualized by Donald Sangsa, and according to him, right, and I quote, the celebrations would mark 300 years of progress and development as a junior partner with Britain in her vast colonial enterprise. Now, clearly, everybody confused because partner is a very strong word there. It's very strong word he was using to describe the relationship between Jamaica and Britain. And I don't want to go too much in this episode, too much in this whole event, because we do have an episode on it. It's called Jamaica 10 Type Beauty Contest. And if you think the 300 celebration is crazy, the 10 Type Beauty Contest that was supposed to be like the hallmark of this 300 celebration, wild, just wildness, one bag of wildness, just wildness and confusion. But we'll move on. Now, during the year, many Jamaicans supported the celebration of 300 years of English colonization while calling for an anti-Emancipation Day holiday, right? Now, in her scholastic paper, Commemorations in Jamaica, A Brief History of Conflicts, Dr. Veronica M. Gregg states the following.
Emancipation Day, it was asserted, was racial and included only black people. The celebration of the English conquest of Jamaica was multiracial or non-racial and inclusive, and therefore more national and more representative of Jamaica.
Now, one example of these calls to end emancipation came from W. Adolph Roberts in an article entitled National Holidays, published in the Pepper Pot magazine. He states,
It is full time that we stop celebrating the abolition of slavery. Most peoples have been enslaved at some point of their history, and when they shook on the condition, they no doubt held fiestas for a few years. But it is a sign of arrested development to go on treating bodily emancipation as a miracle.
still, despite these calls and numerous others, Emancipation Day continued as a public holiday. However, it was noticeable that a large portion of the masses ignored the traditional celebrations. Yet one of the most organized events of the late decade came in 1959 when the African Reformed Church organized their Emancipation Jubilee. Around this time, members of Rastafari were also used the public holiday to call for reparations. So again, listen, can't write all the letter you want. The holiday still was there, right? Basically. However, by early 1962, with Jamaican independence on the horizon and an announcement that it will be celebrated on August 6th, the government had concerns over the two holidays being so close to each other. For one, the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, wanted to get rid of the Emancipation Day altogether. Now, according to the party's founder and president at this time, no, Sir Alexander Bustamante, is he? Big man get knighted. He stated, and I quote, what significance the granting of emancipation had for our independence? No. End quote. While on the other hand, the People's National Party, PNP, emphasized the importance of the recognizing of the past, as according to them, emancipation from slavery is important to political emancipation. As such, they propose Independence Day be celebrated on August 1st, thus tying both events together. Now, in the end, a compromise was reached. As such, in 1962, the commemoration of Emancipation Day was suspended and Independence Day was to be celebrated on the first Monday of August. And as such, Jamaica did not celebrate emancipation that year, and it stayed that way for a very long time. A very long time. Still, just because it was no longer an official holiday did not mean it was not being acknowledged, right? In her book, Modern Blackness, Nationalism, Globalization, and the Politics of Culture in Jamaica, Dr. Deborah Thompson stated that many communities, churches, and persons in the Rastafari community organize their own commemorative events around emancipation. So, again, people still do them thing. People still do them thing. And people will always continue to do them thing. But then came the mid 1990s when PJ Patterson, the nation's now prime minister, took issue with the way Jamaicans viewed blackness. And I just want to pivot a look a bit to say that, given all that we know about PJ, he would have taken this personal, right? You're talking about a country um that have still not have some kind of reconciliation of how colonization has shaped how the society have been racist, colorist, texturist, all of that, sexist, all of that, involved that comes out of colonization. And PJ up to this point was became Jamaica's first dark skinned black prime minister. So up to this point, he would have a very unique experience with his blackness. Is me, I'm trying to say, not to say that, dark skinned people are blacker than anybody else, but there's a unique experience with coming dark skin, especially in a Jamaican society, especially in this society that has a very long history with slavery and colonization. And I don't think anybody will come for your neck if you say he's Jamaica's only black dark skin prime minister. I'm gonna feel about that come for your neck. So he has a very, very unique experience, and with this unique experience I'm going to omit Portia, largely because Portia is a woman and she's from the lower class and she didn't fit the intellectual bourgeoisie that comes with being the highest just being the highest rank public servant, one of the highest rank public servant across the Caribbean. So I'm just going to omit her out of this conversation. I'm going to look at all of them on them. Is me and Travis like Portia had to deal with the gender, she had to deal with the classism, she had to deal with the anti-intellectualism in all of that. She have a very unique experience. So just omit her. But with everybody else, all of them on them, PJ, his blackness was something that he had to deal with differently. You understand? And then you're also looking at PJ's background as someone from Western rural Jamaica who attended UA at the at the dawn of the whole Jamaica doesn't have racism. We are a country that's racial harmonious. Like that narrative that came out of the tourism sector. Again, listen to that 10 Type Beauty Queen episode. And then PJ went to law school in England during the 60s. And this is during when the Black Power movement was taking control of the Western world, and England had their own reconciliation with that. You see me I'm trying to say? So he's seen all of that happening. And he's not only seen that in England, but you're also seeing, this is the 60s, at when numerous Caribbean countries were already independent, including Jamaica, but many were getting ready, to cross over that threshold of a new era. So he's seen that, and not only the English-speaking Caribbean, but they're seeing it across continental Africa as well. You understand? When Nigeria run through the door, they gave permission for everybody else across sub-Saharan Africa, just continental Africa, period, for just run through. You see me, to get their own independence as majority black nations, especially those in the sub-Saharan Africa. So he's seen all of that happening. You understand? So as I said before, he has a very unique experience with that. Cool? Vibes. So I said all of that to say that, film thing with the way Jamaicans with blackness was personal. You see me, I try to say, and with this personal viewpoint, in February 1996, PJ Patterson established a national committee to be chaired by Dr. Rex Nettleford. The late Dr. Rex Nettleford, who was still a cultural juggernaut in the Jamaica intellectual sphere. And Dr. Nettleford, in numerous of his publications and speeches on the black race in Jamaica, saw emancipation not as a singular event, but an ongoing struggle focused on black people liberating themselves from the past and contemporary bondage of colonization. You see, all that I just say? So you sound smart? Sound smart? That's just me summarizing, mirror. And I think I lie to you. So this National Symbols Committee was to look at, and I quote, how the country's national symbol and observance could contribute to sustaining our cultural unity and foster national values to renew the soul and uplift the spirit of our people and arrest social alienation, end quote. The report produced stated that there was a vast confusion of the momentous events among young persons in Jamaica, and as such, Jamaica, and I quote, deserve in the case of Emancipation Day a commemoration, and in the case of Independence Day a celebration. And with all of this being said, PJ Patterson would expound upon this in his autobiography, My Political Journey, Jamaica's Sixth Prime Minister. And this is what he said.
I was ecstatic when the committee recommended the reinstatement of emancipation on 1st August. In consultation held in 4 parishes in written and oral submissions and press contributions, our people revealed their deepest feelings on issues they regard as part of their psychic inheritance, which could avert cultural chaos and release their creative potential. In the minds of many of our young people, there was confusion as to the actual date of our independence. With the passage of time, the observance of Independence Day had weakened considerably. I shared the view that designation 6th of August rather than the first Monday of the month as the holiday would help sharpen the focus and reawaken a consciousness of independence as an important national event. We accepted the recommendation that Independence Day ought to be given its proper date, 6th August, so as to remove any doubt in the minds of our people about the timing and the significance of that historic date.
As such, with PJ accepting the recommendation from the committee, a bill for the double holiday where Emancipation Day would be August 1st and Independence Day August 6th was introduced in Parliament. However, amendments to the Public Holiday Act faced opposition, like will be. The now opposition minister Edward Siaga was of the view that the double holiday would lessen the importance of the country's independence, and just like his party founder almost 30 years ago, question if the commemoration of emancipation would achieve anything important in the country. While Bruce Golding, who was the then president of the National Democratic Movement, NDM, advised that the 2 days be merged into one. Now, despite the blowback, PJ Patterson stood his ground and defended the recommendation of the double holiday. Like, again, take this very serious and very personal. Like, he must stand up on it, 10 toes deep. And with that, the act was successfully amended and Emancipation Day was reinstituted as a national holiday in 1997. This 1997 National Emancipation Day ceremony was held in Spanish Town, the same area where the Emancipation Declaration was first read in 1838. The special guest was the then President of Ghana, First Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings. And ever since that special ceremony in 1997, Jamaica has been celebrating both Emancipation Day and Independence Day as 2 separate public holidays. Another change at the time that PJ would take aim at is the national flag. Cool? Because as I said before, it wasn't just the holiday, he just took issue with the way Jamaicans viewed blackness in its entirety. Now, from its design since independence, the black in Jamaica's flag meant historical hardship. That symbolism came with criticism from numerous public figures. Most notably would have been Philip Sherlock, who written quite a bit, you understand, with issues around the meaning and what it meant. As such, Patterson put forward a change to Parliament to which they accepted. And since then, as all of us who was born after this period, as you have learned in primary school, the black in Jamaica's flag no longer symbolizes hardship, but resilience and strength. Then in August 2002, 5 years after the reinstitution of the holiday, the government will build Emancipation Park, a public park in the heart of New Kingston. And according to Patterson, in the same autobiography, this is what he had to say about the park.
I opened Emancipation Park as a site dedicated to the independence of spirit, the enduring commitment to freedom, and the strength and resilience of our people, whose forebears against the indecency of dehumanization and the denigration of millions of involuntary laborers forced into bondage and treated as beasts of burden for over 2 centuries.
Still, the park faced criticism, and that had not to do with the park itself, but the focal point of the park, the statue at its entrance. Now, if you have never been to Emancipation Park, again, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just Google Emancipation Park, Jamaica statue, right? Because I'm going to need it for vision this in your head, for see the issue with it, right? No, this is a 11-foot bronze sculpture titled Redemption Song, and it was created by Lara Facey Cooper and unveiled on July 31st, 2003 to commemorate the 106th anniversary of emancipation. The statue features two nude figures, a man and a woman shown from the knees up, emerging from a basin of water, facing one another as they gaze towards the sky. Now, this is where the criticism comes from. Different camps of people who are different criticism, right? Now, one camp took aim at the size of the male statue's genitalia. You understand? They were saying it's too small and it doesn't accurately depict black men genitalia. Like, that was so problematic. I not even want to continue about it, but we're just gonna move on. While another camp questioned whether Facey Cooper, a white passing Jamaican, I do not know what this woman identifies, so I'm just gonna put, so I wrote white passing here. White passing Jamaican could identify with the struggle of enslaved black people. Cool? But most criticism came from the nudity of the statue. Are you seeing this camp? There were two sides. Now, some critics, larger conservative circles like the church, stated that the statue promotes nudity. We're just gonna move on from this because this is Jamaica. This is Jamaica, and the statue promotes nudity. All right, click. We know all of you think the same thing, so we'll just move on. However, some persons, mostly academics and the historically aware, took issue that a statue to commemorate the end of slavery features black people being nude when nudity was used to punish black people during slavery. And I don't want to go on a tangent on this because that whole thing and the role that fashion played in slave society really deserve its own episode. No, until that episode is released, actually until I write it, my recommendation to really understand the role of fashion in slave society and why that statue, a lot of persons saw, a lot of academics and the historically aware citing bad taste and just nudity being used as punishment. Just a bit more, flesh out, meat to the matter, get straight to the point. Not straight to the point actually, because it's a long book. It's like 300 pages actually. My recommendation would be The Language of Dress, Resistance and Accommodation in Jamaica by Dr. Buckridge. I can't recall the first name now, but that's the name of the book. Listen, got link on the website, but that I believe would give you a more in writing. Would the day come when I write that episode? That's going to be like my main text to use in writing the episode. You understand? So I would just say go in that direction to really understand what they were saying. Cool. Yeah. Let us continue. Still, despite the backlash, the statue remained and larger criticism do away in the larger Jamaican society. The same cannot be said about emancipation. Now, in recent years, there have been called by those in the private sector that the double holiday lessens productivity in the workplace. In 2020, news came out that the government was considering merging both Emancipation and Independence Day. Also in that year was the Don Anderson poll where 62% of surveyors were in favor of the government merging both holidays. And then in 2024, right, the incident that, had me updating this whole thing and why you're hearing this episode, really. The private sector of Jamaica, PSOJ, made national headlines over a particular proposal of Emancipation and Independence Day. In an October 3rd media release, the organization stated, this is what they said.
In our recent submission to the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, the PSOJ acknowledged the profound historical importance of both Emancipation Day on 1st August and Independence Day on 6th August. These dates, separated by a mere 5 days, encapsulate Jamaica's journey from the abolition of slavery to the achievement of self-governance. We recognize that these public holidays play a crucial role in celebrating our national identity, preserving our cultural heritage, and providing well-deserved rest for our workforce. However, as an organization committed to Jamaica's socio-economic development, we must also consider the challenges faced by businesses in a developing economy like ours. The current arrangement of having two major holidays in such close proximity often results in extended periods of reduced productivity, as many workers and businesses tend to bridge the gap between these dates with additional time off. This phenomenon, sometimes referred to as a holiday hangover, can disrupt economic momentum, particularly in key sectors such as manufacturing, tourism, and agriculture. To address these concerns while still honoring the significance of both holidays, the PSOJ has proposed the creation of a single extended weekend holiday period, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. This approach aims to focus and potentially amplify the impact of our national celebrations. To gauge public sentiment on this idea, we conducted a survey in August 2024, which revealed that 67% of respondents support the concept of a consolidated holiday period.
Oh, that's not the whole thing. Cool. There's more to say that they said, but we're gonna link it on the website so you can read the full statement. This is just a snapshot of what they said. But there just before I move on, there was a line in it where they were comparing other countries, right? And them draw for Singapore. I'm gonna never really understand. Like, and this is not like a disagree or agree. Like, wherever you lie, and actually, if you're opposing, if you're in the same camp as PSOG, right? The whole opposition to the double holiday, cool. This is my advice. You understand? To help bring your point across, probably not draw for Singapore, because me not like no, Singapore doesn't have the same history as Jamaica. You understand? So 400, this is 400 years of slavery. You can't use Singapore because that relationship to just one of humanity's most brutal events, they don't have that relationship to it. You see me I trying to say? Like, it's not their history. You understand? Like, no. Like, no. Like, that just, it was just weird. Like, don't use it. Don't use it. And Jamaicans have this thing where them love draw for Singapore every year. I mean, it's like the whole comparison. Oh, we could have been to Singapore. No, we could not. Every year, somebody write an article, but like, no. It's good that you have, like, you can use some policy changes and some policy issues, and that's fine. You understand? Like, you can't just do that with any country. You understand? But the Singapore we could have been Singapore. No, we could not. We could not have been. So, with that being said, my advice is probably draw for your country that have similar background to Jamaica. So, my recommendation, you understand, if you're in that camp, is Antigua and Barbuda. You see me, Antigua and Barbuda, Emancipation Day is not a national holiday on their books. You understand? It's incorporated into a larger thing with their Carnival Week. You understand? And so, like, is Antigua and Barbuda, they have been through most of the specific history that all Anglophone Caribbean countries have gone through, like Jamaica. So that's the best example. Drawing for Singapore now really bring your point across. So PSOJ, you understand? This is not me, this is not me, you understand? I'm just saying. You see? This is my recommendation to you. You understand? Other persons. Cool? This is not a good example. Singapore was not a good policy comparison. Antigua and Barbuda is right there. It's right across the seas. Draw for that one there. Cool? Alright, let us continue. No, backlash to PSAJ came from persons on traditional and social media. Public figures in government also weighed in. The island's Chief Justice, Brian Sykes, stated,
I would want to think that there are some things in our nation's history that really cannot carry a price tag, and freedom and the celebration of freedom is one of them. It is not about or solely about an organized weekend-long celebration that could attract tourists to participate in cultural events, concerts, and festivals, whereby boosting revenue across various sectors. I would have thought that the emancipation of enslaved persons of African descent, which was, in our case, the antecedent to independence, would warrant more analysis than to be described as a mere 5 days, encapsulating, I put in that word, Jamaica's journey from abolition of slavery to the achievement of self-governance.
No, PJ Patterson, now retired, stated that the proposal was, and I quote, retrograde step and a severe violation of our ancestry, end quote, as, and I quote, comfort and convenience cannot be our response to the deaths and atrocities of the Middle Passage, end quote. Listen, if you want to get PJ out of retirement, like you want to hear him, bring up this, because he might go step, always a go step, right? Again, you can see that this is something that he take personally, as I said before. So, the former Prime Minister's statement was a summary of his 2015 open letter to the UK's Prime Minister David Cameron, who on his visit to Jamaica told Parliament that both the Caribbean and Britain should move on from this painful legacy of slavery. And this is just coming like a few months after, after we would have learned that England was paying monies to the descendants of slave owners for the ending of slavery. So because black people were property, you understand, England ending slavery, they had to be paying monies to people, to white family, from just white slave owners. And and they were doing that from 1838 right up to like 2050. Let's call it 2015. So yeah. And yeah, we should move on from the painful legacy of slavery, And with all of that being said, this is what PJ Patterson wrote in his letter.
The attempt to trivialize and diminish the significance of 300 years of British enslavement of Africans and the trade in their bodies reflects the continued ethnic targeting of our ancestors and their progeny for discriminatory treatment, both in the annals of history and in the present. The 180 years of slavery in Jamaica remain fresh in living memory. There are people alive in Jamaica today whose great-grandparents were a part of the slavery system, and the memory of slavery still lingers in these households and communities. Those 180 years were followed by another 100 years of imposed racial apartheid, in which these families were racially oppressed by British armies and colonial machinery. The scars of this oppression are still alive in the minds and hearts of 1 million Jamaicans. To speak of slavery as something from the Middle Ages is insufficient. For our communities, its legacies are still present in their memory and emotions. To reject this living experience is to repudiate the very meaning and existence of these people's lives.
Still, the commemoration of certain events in the Anglophone Caribbean, especially those relating to slavery and just colonization in general, have garnered public thought. Take, for example, back in 2020, when many Caribbean countries faced numerous calls from the public to remove statues celebrating Christopher Columbus's legacy. Now, a couple of his statues is like scattered across the Caribbean. I know Jamaica has one in St. Anne's Bay. I think that's the one that most people know. And Barbados, I remember Barbados own distinctively because theirs was one of the few that got taken down after this like whole public calls. But just like Emancipation, people still, was wary of like the whole thing. You understand? And one of the most high profile thoughts, I'm gonna go with thoughts here. One of the most high profile thoughts on this came from Jamaican businessman and sometimes self-styled political commentator Kevin Oberon-Chang. And this is what he tweeted.
How many of us would be here if Columbus had not sailed?
To which he followed up with,
had Columbus not sailed, the cannibal Caribs would have eventually eaten up the Tainos like they did elsewhere.
And in the wake of numerous backlash across traditional and social media, Mr. Chang offered an apology to the public on July 11th.
A few days ago, I posted a question on social media which was screenshot. It is clear that the question I asked caused a lot of persons concern and pain. It was never my intention to promote historical figures or events which caused death and destruction for millions. While my motives were sincere, the fact is it was an error of judgment. I unequivocally apologize for making that post.
Yeah. Out of that whole thing, his own. Well, that's just because Mr. Chang, like we all know Fantana, we all shop at Fantana, so just like of him, in the space and stuff. So it was highly covered. But there was some couple other stuff, but yeah, that happened and that came and he apologized and yeah, all of that. Then in some countries, they have gone beyond a public holiday to reflect on the plight of their black ancestors. In December 2021, Barbados, the birthplace of British Black Slave Society, which, pause right there, so we have an episode on that, about Barbados being the birthplace of Black British Slave Society. And that episode is around the beginning of mosquitoes, how mosquitoes became a plague in the Caribbean, like the histories of mosquitoes in the Caribbean. Great episode. Wonderful episode. Yet go listen to it. Like after you're done listening to this, go listen to that. Great episode. Wonderful piece of episode. If you really want to understand how colonization, it just stretch thin. And I think this is our first environmental-esque episode. So not gonna lie to you, a piece of episode, nice, wonderful piece of episode. So you can go ahead and listen to that. Yeah. Or if you don't want to do that, you can go read Dr. Bickle's book about, Barbados being the birthplace of British Slave Society. So we have options here. But we'll continue. In December 2021, Barbados, the birthplace of British Black Slave Society, announced that they will be building a slavery museum. The new site will lie next to a burial ground where the bodies of 570 enslaved black people were discovered. As Mia Motley, the island's prime minister, stated, the area, and I quote, will be dedicated to unlocking the enduring trauma and histories of enslavement, end quote. The news came just a few weeks after Barbados severed colonial ties with Britain and became a parliamentary republic. Then in August 2024, Trinidad and Tobago announced that they will be rejoining their coat of arms of Christopher Columbus's 3 ships, replacing them with their national instrument, the steel pan. In the wake of backlash, because there was a lot of backlash that this will be rewriting history, and there were some members of the, all right, I can't pronounce the Trinidad again. I can't pronounce that word. Like you merge both islands. I don't know what you call it. I can't pronounce it. I can spell it and it's in the front of my head, but I can't do it. But persons from Trinidad and Tobago who are of Indian heritage, yes, they took issues with the steel pan being solely used. Yes. So that was another position. The whole rewriting history. I distinctly remember Kamala Persa-Bissessar, who's the opposition minister. She said something like, I don't. She said something, but the only thing I remember from what she said is that she said something. This is what she said. In the modern era of wokeness, and I've been thinking about that phrase ever since. Because it's just like, those are some interesting combination of words. Interesting combination. But that happened, yes. So in the wake of all of that, Dr. Claudius Fergus, the esteemed historian who chairs the National Committee on Reparations, this is what he stated.
This is not an attack on the history of the Caribbean. It's not an attempt to erase, but rather to correct. Every generation has an obligation to reinterpret their history and to correct the falsehoods on which some of that history would have been written.
Yeah, so that's what Trinidad is having. Trinidad and Tobago, this is the country of Dr. Eric Williams, You understand? Who gave us capitalism and slavery, You see me I trying to say like esteemed politician but great historian. You see me I trying to say? So they had that this year. Still, in Jamaica, there seems to be no move by the Jamaican government to suspend Emancipation Day celebrations or merge both holidays. Just that still be there. And I know the opposition, PMP, released a statement saying that under any government they hold, they are not going to change the current system. And as such, for now, the Emancipation Day public holiday is safe. However, just like what have been happening for the last, let's go, almost 190 years, we can expect the public debate over the holiday to continue.
And with that, we call an end to this episode. To view the sources used in this episode, and or recommendations to learn more about the topic, visit our website at tenementyardmedia.com. A transcript of this episode will be available 5 days after it has been posted to podcast outlets. We'd also really love to hear from you. Follow our social media pages at tenementyard underscore on Instagram, X or Twitter, and TikTok to view additional postings on this episode and updates on other content created by Tenement Yard Media. We're also open to conversation about this and other episodes and truly all happenings around Caribbean history and culture. Just a quick note before we leave, we're on Patreon at patreon.com/tenementyardmedia if you'd like to support the show with a monthly donation of as little as $1. You can also make a donation of your choice at tenementyardmedia.com. Until next time, this has been Lest We Forget, a historical podcast from Tenement Yard Media.